Be informed, be inspired. Join us for the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show. Tune in and listen for both modern and ancient wisdom on all things maternity, parenting and sacred women's business, right here on the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show.
We're tuned in to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, contemporary conversations where stories, science, traditions and new ideas meet. Our show is coming to you from the studios of BFM in Byron Bay and is broadcasting across Australia on the Community Radio Network. This episode of Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, we are talking about raising kids who care for the earth, sustainability and farm life with Annie Byrant, storyteller, musician living on the far south coast of Australia. Annie's stories and music for children are inspired by nature and the rhythms of life. So environmental sustainability and sustainable growth is development that meets the current needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This definition of sustainability comes from the Brundtland Report in 1987, which sets the standard for sustainable development as we know it today. You're here with me, Lara Martin, and Gabby Tudor. Annie, you're living on the south coast of Australia on a farm. Can you tell us a bit about what that's like for you and your family?
So many of those experiences, lots of challenging experiences too, from farm life. You are really in there with life and death all the time. And so I could see that my boys were living and breathing this, and we were living in town. We wanted to take it further. We really wanted them to feel it in their bodies too, and on an experiential level. And so we put it out there in the world and ended up living on a farm in the far south coast where we've been for a year. And it is such a different life and experience. Everything we do revolves around the rhythms of the farm. So we have chickens, we have horses, we have cows, we have pigs who we don't have anymore, and there's a big story in itself. Goats, we've just said goodbye to some goats as well. So we have birthed many animals on the farm in the year, and we have laid many animals to rest in the farm on the year. And it is such a beautiful, real cycle of life that I feel we're all turning together. And
Annie, how do you feel that living on the farm as a family is shaping the character of your two children?
Wow, that is such a big question. And it's one I think about a lot. How is it shaping them? They really see life for what it is, I think. They probably, a quick answer is the food we eat, I think. That's one of their biggest, nutshell type experiences. We raise our own chickens, we collect the eggs every day, some of our animals we have laid to rest, we've sent their spirits off to the heavens, and half of our family have eaten them. Now the other half is vegetarian. I won't tell you which half. So that in itself has had lots of challenges too. The boys are completely integrated into every part of our huge veggie garden, which is bordering on market garden. They know when, we plant with the biodynamic calendar. They know what the moon's doing. They know when to plant. They know when to harvest. They sort of know when to weed with a bit of help. And sometimes we don't weed. And probably one of the best experiences is we were so lucky to land on a farm that is about 50 acres, which is very small in farm scale. It's a hobby farm type style, and the woman who still owns the property, has this massive library of sustainable living books. And so when they're not on the farm, they are reading, okay, how do you raise goats? What is the best way to handle a broody chicken successfully so you'll get 8 out of 8 eggs rather than 10 out of 11? They're learning through the books, which is great, and then they're actually taking it out onto the farm and practicing it. So the food they eat, our meal, when we sit down to eat a meal, it's all about, wow, we've grown this broccoli, or, oh, isn't it great, our friends down the road gave us these cabbages, or, if it happens to be meat, then there's a story of an animal's life as well. It's, there is just, we're not trying to give them an awareness of food, it just is there. It's just naturally a part of their daily life.
The world that I like better than bacon and lettuce and homegrown tomatoes. Oven in the morning, out in the garden. Get you a rifle, hey, don't get a hardy. Plant them in the spring, Eat 'em in the summer, all winter without 'em's a culinary bummer.
You're tuned to Pregnancy, Birth, and Beyond Radio. I'm Gabby Tudor, and we're speaking with Annie Byrant today about farm life and sustainability. And we just kind of had a few questions about what does that really look like in an urban setting? I mean, it's really easy to kind of visualize the farm life with cows and chickens, but when you're kind of living in a city or, really inner city, you want to really see how you can embody that type of sustainability.
I think for the majority of us, we live in urban settings, and I'm not sure if our family will live on a farm forever either. It's not a life that's for everyone, and of course, we all have very different things that we need to do and different things we need to juggle as parents in life. I could never have lived the way we're living now with a 5-month-old. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, partly because I homeschool the boys as well. So there is so much to it, and we think about every decision that, everything that goes into the farm, we think about so much. So I don't know if I would have taken it on with a 5-month-old, as we were just saying. And also I don't know if we'll do it forever. So bringing this into an urban setting, yes, absolutely. Everything we do on the farm, we stop and think, what is the actual, what is the philosophy, if you like, or what is the, how does this make sense in a holistic way? Does this sit with our whole being? And we do that in every aspect of life, no matter where we're living. So, yes, how do we grow food in an urban setting? Of course we can do that. We get pots if we don't have any dirt. We can put them on the deck, and we can do that very easily with children. And I think some of us, I certainly have many times in my life been stopped thinking, but what's the point? You've got to really do it and you've got to do it properly. But actually a child's experience is such a sensory one. It is they're not seeing the big, all the pieces of the puzzle like we often are. They're actually just feeling the dirt going into the pot and feeling their finger as they plant the seed. And then in a week or so, up here a lot quicker, watching the sprout pop out and the miracle that is, and then seeing that grow into a food plant. And it may not even produce food, but the plant itself is a miracle. And especially with young children, and young, I think under 5 is young. There's a great David Suzuki quote, and I don't know it off, word for word, but the sentiment of it is we must embed a deep love, a sensory love of the natural world before we teach our children to save it. Why would they want to save something that they don't feel on every single part, every cell of their body? And I think as parents, it's not about living on a farm. It's not even about having a garden, although of course growing your own food is an awesome thing to do. It's about, when they're young, enabling them to feel the wind on their skin, enabling them to be in a deep forest. It might be on a once-a-year holiday, to feel what it actually feels like to be in those huge ancient trees where the air is so pure and the time does not exist. To have them have that as a sensory experience, to pick up nature, to feel it, to see it, to sing in it, to all those very, very simple but so deeply. And that's why my cow pat story to open the segment was about, I remember feeling that, everyone says, cow pat, how gross, and it's like, wow, my first impression of cow manure was actually felt really soft and silky in my toes. And hey, just happens to be a fantastic fertilizer that, and for me, it's all those experiences, yes, which we're practicing on farm life. It's all about the deeper spiritual value of them. Yes, composting. We take poo. We're constantly dealing with our own poo in our lives, our own metaphorical poo. We take that poo, we compost it, we add a bit of this, we add a bit of that. We have bad days, we have good days, we add it all in. We have days where we yell at our children, we have days where we're beautiful with our children, and we throw it all into the compost and we let it brew and we sit, and time turns it into something healing and nourishing and beautiful. And so that, I think, is the true gift of connecting with nature in an urban setting, in a farm setting, in your community garden, walking down the street, stopping and smelling a flower. It's as simple as that, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that you embodying that is so important, because there's so many of us, myself included, that really want to have that farm experience. I know me and a lot of the women in my mother's group are always saying, we'd love to live on land and do the things that you're talking about, but we're also living with very small children. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old, which Annie and I were just talking about. And we were saying, how can we realistically do this? How can we embody that? But it's so good to remember how simplistic your connection to nature can be, and your connection to food and things of that essence. And it really is important, because small children really feel that, don't they? They feel the wind on their face, and they feel the trees even more deeply than we do. Busying along, going, okay, do we have this and this and this? But they're really feeling it and really experiencing that too, to a spiritual level.
And it's not just a nice thing to do. It's actually, it is a nice thing to do, and it's building a very deep sense of their connection to nature, which is so important for our future.
I want to be a farmer, rising with the morning sun. I want to be a farmer, resting only when the day is done.
Annie, I just want to hear about some of the inspiration behind your music.
Sure. So I guess all my music and stories, is that okay if I talk about stories too? Yeah. So I guess the stories are what comes first. I use metaphors always from nature. So I have the 4 CDs, or the 4 collections, which are based on the 4 seasons. And they're very much inspired by the metaphors of the seasons. I write stories, and then I'll write a song to bring out those metaphors even more in that more rhythmic, song-based sense. So yeah, my inspiration is always nature. The new album has been especially fun and challenging, because I've been living on land, and I really wanted to write, I suppose, a love song of sorts to the land and what it means to me. Now, to me, I come from a very traditional dairy farming background, and I walked away from that life, and my parents also did, because there was so much in the practice that ethically didn't sit with us. So there's that, and there's that going on where I live, all around me, traditional farming practices. And I'm so lucky, and I guess why we're there, that there's all these fantastic, they're not even new age, a lot of them are old, very, very old traditional, pre-agrarian revolution, industrial revolution stuff that are being revived. But of course, permaculture, my husband's a permaculturalist, and, we live by those principles, I guess. Natural farming, it's not new age farming, it's just sustainable farming practices. So I wanted to, but there's so much in those old school traditional farmers too. They're so connected to the land. Yeah, sure, they're using sprays and they're not doing things that I'm into, but they're connected in a way that we, some of us aren't. So I wanted to somehow create a collection of stories and songs that honoured all of that and brought it to the child on that sensory level, which is where I'm always writing too. And then there's the big story, the opening story on there called the Panicum Tin. There had to be a story on there inspired by Aboriginal connection to the land, because that's where it begins and ends, really. And I started reading the work of Bruce Pascoe, the work of Bill Gammage, who are, all into looking at what was Australia really like before white settlement occurred. And there's all this evidence there that they actually were practicing a form of agriculture. It didn't look as, big as what ours did, but, there's evidence of the oldest tools that were used to dig the earth. They dug the earth. They planted seeds. They harvested crops. They stored seeds. Huge evidence there that showed Aboriginal people were, I don't know if you'd call them farmers. When I'm telling the story, I talk about the first farmers. It's a loose term in that sense, but they certainly were. They were living in a way different to the hunter-gatherer image that we have all been brought up on and fed quite strongly, because perhaps it suited the purposes of white settlement. Who knows? But, so that's the opening story, is the Panicum Tin, and it's about us tracing back to our roots, which mine are very much Irish, English roots, and then the interaction that happened 200 years ago. And of course it's a fictional story, but it's based on the Panicum crops, which were grown in the higher lands, the cooler climates of Australia, and the harvesting that went on, and the help that the Indigenous people offered those first settlers who couldn't grow their corn. The seeds wouldn't take to this soil, so they gave them flour. Mm-hmm. There are innumerable ways that the Aboriginal people, we wouldn't be here if they hadn't have shown us where to be. We wouldn't be here if they hadn't have helped us. not knowing the bigger picture, of course, of what was going to happen. Of course, they assisted us in being here. And so, yeah, through all that research and awareness that I've been gaining and privileged to gain, the first story had to be about that. When I saw Bruce Pascoe speak, he's the author of Dark Amy, a book you might have heard of. When I saw him speak not long ago, the question was posed to him, what do we do? What do we do with this information? And he said, you tell your children. Tell the children. Let them grow up knowing